Alright, so if you're going to color your hair at home, you might as well do it right. If you don't know, I am a cosmetologist. I've worked as a cosmetologist for 7 years, maybe a little bit longer. I also teach cosmetology at a beauty school, and I've been doing that for about 5-6 years now. So I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of coloring hair. I have colored a lot of people's hair. I've touched hundreds of people's heads and hairs and all of that, and that sounds creepy, and I don't even know that I care. So I feel like it's important to make sure you're not doing a half-baked job. Did anybody else's parents always say like half-baked job in terms of like you're not doing your job correctly? That's what we don't want. I want you to have a really beautiful color, even if you're doing it at home. And I've come to realize that if people are going to do their hair at home, nothing's going to stop them from doing that. So I don't want you to trash your hair if you end up doing this. First things first, and this is, if you take nothing else away from this, take this away. Please at least go to Sally's when you're buying a hair color. Please do not buy a box hair color. And if you don't know what a box hair color is, I'll show a picture of maybe some here. But box hair colors basically come with everything that you might need to color your hair. So typically, you'll open the box, you'll have color, it'll have instructions, it'll typically come with a pair of gloves, your developer, all of that, all in one. There are so many reasons to not use a box hair color. However, first and foremost, it is so damaging on your hair. And the same can be said for boxed bleach. I'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in another video. But please, please, please at least go to Sally's when you're trying to get hair color for. The reason being is because they are just so damaging on your hair. I've done lots and lots of experiments with regular hair color versus boxed hair color, and honestly, you can physically feel the difference on the hair between a box hair color and a professional hair color. Reason being is because box hair colors are meant to be foolproof, which means that they are also the most damaging on the hair. They're meant to work on anybody's hair, fine hair, coarse hair, gray hair, any of that. So because of that, they have to make it a certain amount of damaging because it has to be able to work on anybody's hair. So please, please, please go to Sally's. Now, at Sally's, they sell a lot of different options. So I want to talk about, first, you need to determine what you need before you even get to the store. Now, the things that I always like to tell my students is, first, you need to know what your natural level is. What is the natural level that grows out of your scalp? For me, this is my natural level, okay? What is the stuff that grows out of your scalp? What is your existing color? So for me, my existing color is this really, really dark brown color, this blonde on my ends, and this green that I have put in for a pop of color. That is my existing color. It consists of all of that. One thing that I like to note is that it can be important to also determine when you're looking at that if your hair leans more warm, cool, or neutral. And I'll pop up some examples as well of that. But what I mean by that is, the best way to describe it is Elsa or Anna. If your hair is more on the cool side, that's more Elsa. If your hair is on the warmer side, you're looking at more Anna. It's the difference of if you see violets or blues or more of that white blonde, that's Elsa. If you see more yellows and golds and oranges, Anna, right? So obviously my hair is very, very warm. The top of my hair might be more on the neutral side, and then obviously the green is more on the cool side. So that's really important to note. I will not typically write it down, but if you need to write it down to be able to remember all of this information, that's a good thing. Do that. Do what you need to do. The next is pull up a picture of what you want. What is that one? Is it how light or dark it is? How cool or warm it is? You need to know all of that information before you even start making any sort of determinations. That's the first step. I feel like most of the time when I see people mess up, it's because they haven't done their due diligence with this step first. And that is something that you need to know. Everybody's hair is a level 1 to a level 10. So level 10 is bright blonde. Sometimes it goes up to a level 12, but for the purposes of this, we're going to say level 10 is the brightest white blonde. Level 1 is black. So when you're determining what color hair you have, you need to first determine also like what level, because that's going to tell you if you need to lift your hair at all, if it's no lift, just what's called deposit. So that basically means that we're not lifting the hair at all. That'll tell you all of that. So I have a level finder right here. So if you look at it, it looks like my hair might be black. Like, first off, it's not. It is more of like a 2 or a 3 color. So if I'm putting that level finder up to it, do you see how you start seeing like, okay, yeah, it's probably a level 3. You can kind of go through and do that with all of the rest of the colors on the hair. Now, if you don't know, use your best guess. If you need to Google level finder on the internet, do that. They can be really good at determining. The reason you need to determine this is because, first of all, it's going to determine whether or not you have to lighten your hair. I'm not going to talk too much about lightening your hair in this video, but I do want to mention that. Second, we also need to determine the percentage of gray that exists within your hair. So, like 25% gray is going to be a quarter of your hair is gray. 10% is going to be like 1 in every 10 strands is gray. So determining that will also determine your formulation that you are going to put on your hair. Now, if your desired color, remember we talked about what your existing color is, your natural color is, and your desired color. If your desired color, level-wise, remember level-wise, is lighter than what your existing level is, you have to bleach your hair. Full stop, end of story. There is no other option there. There are a lot of times that people are like, oh, well, this says that this isn't bleached. I don't want to bleach my hair because of this, or I've heard that bleaching causes a lot of damage. Yes, it can, but if your hair is lighter, if you have colored your hair before, if it is not virgin hair, and you want your hair to be lighter, it needs to be bleached. There's no exceptions to that. If your hair is not virgin hair and the color that you want is lighter, you have to bleach your hair. So I know that people always are like, well, there's color oops or these color removers, all of that. I'm going to tell you the truth. Most of those are either some sort of lightener, some sort of bleach, or they are just as damaging, if not more damaging. That's it. And lightener isn't necessarily something to be afraid of, but if your hair, like, I just can't even stress this enough. If the color that you're wanting is lighter than your natural hair color, or not than your natural, if the color that you're wanting is lighter than the color that you have, and you do not have virgin hair, you do not have a choice. It has to be bleached. Okay, sorry, I know I repeated that a lot, but there are not exceptions to that. It will not work. And some of you might be saying, oh, Chell, I've done it before and it worked just fine. I would be very curious to see what you actually used, because in my experience, the results that you get are so unpredictable that it's almost as if they don't work at all. So, moving on from that. If your hair is virgin hair and the color that you want is lighter, that is doable, and that's going to have to do with your developers that you choose. So let's talk a little bit about developer. Developer is what you add to your color product to basically activate the product, to start what's called the oxidation process. So if you've gone into Sally's and you've looked at the color before, you'll see Sally's has their own Sally brand, so we're going to use that as an example. But you'll see the Sally brands has a 10 volume, a 20 volume, a 30 volume, and a 40 volume, okay? 10, 20, 30, 40 stands for, first of all, the level of lift that you're getting. Each one is going to cause a different level of lift, but also a different amount of damage. Remember I talked about box color being foolproof, meaning that it can cause a lot of damage, right? And that's because 40 volume is the most strong, and it's typically what is in those box colors, and most people do not need 40 volume on their hair, okay? So for 10 volume, if you are only going one level lighter, or if you're going darker than the color that exists on your hair, 10 volume is going to be perfect. It's going to cause the least amount of damage. It's going to be the one that you want. 20 volume is great for gray coverage. If you are getting 20 volume, you maybe want 2 levels of lift or a gray coverage. Beyond that, 30 and 40 volume, I would say, typically are only going to be used for virgin hair. Because like I said, color doesn't lift color. If you don't have virgin hair, you cannot use developer to lift your hair, okay? So if you have virgin hair, never colored your hair before, you can use 30 color to go, 30 color, that's not right, 30 volume to go 3 levels lighter than your natural hair. If you have 40 volume, you can go up to 4 levels lighter than your natural hair. This is your natural hair, not colored. Now, there are a few things that I want you to keep in mind when you are coloring your hair at home. First, read the instructions on the box, because there are different mixing ratios and you should make sure that you're following that. Some mixing ratios for color make you mix 1 part developer or 1 part color to 2 parts developer. Some of them make you mix 2 parts developer to 1 part color. 1 to 2, 2 to 2. It really just depends. The higher the volume gets, the more damage as well. So make sure you keep that in mind. There are also something that's called like semi-permanents, demi-permanents, and I'm not going to talk about those right now because that's just a whole nother can of worms, and I'm kind of focusing on permanent hair color right now. So some other notes that I want you to keep in mind is your color wheel just in general. What color are you putting on top of another color? Because that is going to change the outcome of what's going on. So, for example, if you're familiar with the color wheel, you know that red is opposite of green. So for my hair, if we were using my hair as an example, if I wanted to have a beautiful, vibrant red on where I've got my green color, I can't just slap a red on top of that. That's not going to work because, looking at the color wheel, they are opposite of each other on the color wheel. Meaning that if I were to put a red on top of this green, I would get brown. So make sure you're keeping in mind your color wheel, what you're putting on top of another color. So for example, putting a bright red on top of a gray, what's going to happen? Well, red plus white equals pink. Not to say you can't have a really vibrant red color, but you're going to want to put some brown in your formulation so that your hair doesn't turn pink on your gray hair. If you put a red over an orange color, what are you going to get? Well, red plus orange, yes, it's still going to be red, but it might lean more towards a peachy hue. It's not going to be like a true red. If you put a red over a yellow color, it's going to be more of a coral color. The red might be a little bit more vibrant than the yellow because we know that yellow is a less strong pigment, but make sure you're keeping that in mind. What are you starting with? What are you going to? Because like I said at the very beginning, That's the first thing we determine, is our existing color, our natural color, and our desired color. Part of the reason is because when you look at the color wheel, we need to know these things in order to get the result that we want. If you come in to any salon and say, I want my color, and you like show a picture of this beautiful red color, right? Just because you pick out a swatch from the book does not mean that that's the color we're going to put straight on your hair, because we have to know how the color wheel works. If you already have orange on your hair, yeah, that's a decent starting point, but we might want to tweak the formula a little bit so that you're actually getting what you want. So keep in mind what you're putting on top of each other. If you're not sure what to put on top of each other, I can probably talk about that a little bit more in detail in maybe another video, but if you're not sure what to put on top of each other, take a look at the color wheel. And one thing to keep in mind is that browns are made with all of the colors in all of the primary colors. Browns are made with all of the primary colors. So if you're not sure, if you're putting maybe a brown on top of a yellow, keep this in mind. Brown is made with red, yellow, and blue. The strongest pigment out of red, yellow, and blue is blue. It's the strongest, it's the darkest, so what do blue and yellow make? Green. Blue and yellow make green. So it's super, super important to make sure that you're keeping in mind anytime you're coloring your hair at home, make sure you take a look at what your color is and what you're putting on top of it, and using the color wheel to make sure that you're not getting any unexpected surprises, because I don't want that for you, because that sucks. You don't want to have to redo your hair color. If you have more questions about this, I would love to help you out. It is what I do. I have been doing hair for a while now, and I do love teaching people how to do this. However, that being said, your hairdresser is going to have more experience with this, and they're going to know a lot more about color theory and what works well. So if this is a little bit overwhelming to you, that's fine, but I would suggest that maybe you do go into a salon to get your hair colored, or even going into a beauty school is a great option. I know it scares a lot of people, but being someone that works at a beauty school, for the most part, you are getting your hair checked before and after the service, and you're not allowed to really leave until your hair has been checked. So it should at least be checked by a professional. The other thing is, beauty schools tend to be a lot cheaper. So if you're a little bit overwhelmed by all this information and don't want to do it yourself, going to a beauty school can be a really good way of kind of mitigating that and not spending boatloads of money and not having to worry about that. And one thing that I like to also say is that time is money. So if it's going to take you 10 hours to do this, or whatever the case may be, going to a beauty school, you can get it done a lot quicker, and you're probably going to be spending the same amount in terms of like time and money. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. I think that there is so much more that I could talk about in terms of color, but those are the very basics of starting to color your hair at home. I hope you learned something. I hope that this did answer some of your questions. I hate to ask this, but I would love if you gave this video a like, subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down, weirdo face, I don't know. All of that, because I would love to hear your... Thanks for watching. Bye!